All righty. All right. Well, folks, thanks so much. We're going to go ahead and get this show started. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining our first of many webinars that we'll be having this year in 2018, Red Reef Digital hosting and producing. What we have here is our very first, and it is the State of Inbound Marketing for 2018. Before we get started, I want to go through a little bit of housekeeping. First, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Christina Tierney. I'm the Vice President of Strategy and Operations here for Red Reef Digital. And you'll hear from me throughout from a logistics perspective, as we're going to have Sean Tybor presenting, who I'll introduce to you in just a moment. So first things first, you're all muted, as I mentioned earlier, to a few of the folks that had joined early. And so if you are busy with the cat maybe running across the laptop, or you've got a noisy environment behind you, you're okay. You're good to go. You don't need to worry. The other thing I want to kind of give you a heads up on is you're all muted. I did mention that, and we'll see you raise your hand, but also feel free to please provide us with questions in the QA box. If you'd like, you can test that out and see how that's going. I won't mind a few hellos. What we'll be doing is collecting all the questions from you throughout, and then we're going to have a few minutes for questions and answer at the end of the presentation. So now what I'd love to do is to be able to present to you Sean Tybor, marketing strategist, digital expert, and salmon enthusiast. And with that, I'm going to let Sean tell you a little bit more about himself and explain the salmon part.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. The salmon enthusiast part is simply because I'm from Anchorage, Alaska, born and raised, and now living in Florida. So I am always on the hunt for good salmon down here. Unfortunately, they don't swim in the waters offshore from where we live, but occasionally Costco has a good deal. So I'm the owner and founder of Red Reef Digital, HubSpot and Gold partner, digital marketing agency, and consultancy. So we work both as agents of our clients as well as consulting with them to improve their strategy and execution on their digital goals.
My background and experience is across a
wide range of B2C and B2B companies and brands. I've worked in higher education, I've worked in healthcare, I've worked in consumer packaged goods, and for the last couple of years, I've run Red Reef Digital as a way to bring that experience of big business, big, large corporate brands to smaller and mid-sized companies to help them be more effective and help connect with their prospects, their customers, and their consumers in a more robust and more authentic way. So with that in mind, let's talk a little bit about what's happening in 2018. Where does the world stand today? What are some of the past behaviors and ideas that are no longer valid? What should we be focused on in the future? So this is a quote from William Gibson, one of my favorite authors. He was the guy who coined the term cyberpunk. And he said, the future is already here. It's just not very evenly distributed. And what he's referring to is that, there are the elements of the future are here every day. One of my roles as a digital expert is to seek out those trends and seek out the things that are happening in the future, find them where they exist in the world today, and recognize them before they become more mainstream and more prevalent. What I love about this quote is that he said it in 1993 at the dawn of the internet. And at the time that he said that, the internet was already here. All of the basic features and capabilities that we needed to have the internet age, the information age, take place over the last 25 years or so was all there in 1993. It's just become a matter of distribution and delivering that across the board to the global population. So let's talk about a few things, a few myths that are out there. So a lot of we still speak with clients that talk about their TV strategy or their radio strategy. And they say it still works for awareness and direct response, right? They're saying, like, I got to be on TV, or I got to have my billboard campaign, or I've got to have these traditional methods of advertising. It's just not the case anymore. 94% of consumers are skipping TV commercials. There are some pockets where this still works. Live sports still works. If you're looking at buying an ad during the Super Bowl, I would be happy to help you do that, because people don't skip those ads. They're paying attention. You have their attention. I had the opportunity to hear Gary Vaynerchuk speak earlier this year, and what he said was that we are all competing for attention. So we're looking for the attention of our prospects, of our customers, and our consumers. And consumers have more choices now about how they choose to direct their attention. And TV is no longer the place where you can do that. More on the sales side, but certainly a tactic that has been long in use is cold calling, right? So reaching out, calling people directly as a way to engage those leads. And again, that's busted. 36% of the salespeople that were surveyed this past year say it's harder to connect via phone versus just 2 or 3 years ago, and that trend is going to continue. I think we can all look to our own lives and see how many calls we get, how many robocalls, how many spoofed caller ID phones calls we get that are people trying to reach us. And the reason why they're doing that is because they can, even if it's a fraction of the people that they call respond, it's profitable for them. But how authentic is that really? How is that the kind of company that you want to do business with, or where you want to spend your dollars and where you want to engage with them? And then the last myth here is around purchased email lists. So we've spoken with a lot of B2B customers who spend quite a bit of money on buying email lists and then blasting out an email to them and looking to get a response. And again, it's busted, right? And that's not to say that email marketing isn't incredibly valuable, but when you build your own list, when you own it, when you're the one who got that engagement with people and got people to sign up and say, yeah, I want to have that ongoing relationship with you, I want to receive your emails, your open rates are 10 times higher than purchase lists, right? So in this scenario, you really want to be looking for, how am I going to build that relationship with my audience, whether it's an email list, YouTube subscribers, Facebook followers and fans. Build that audience yourself. You own them. There's no shortcuts to this. There's no way to purchase a list and have it really be an effective way to spend your marketing dollars. Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that buyer's journey. We've talked about some ways that buyers are engaging in ways that used to work and were tried and true and are no longer working anymore. Let's talk about that journey. How are people connecting with us as businesses, as marketing professionals? Where can we find these people? Where are they at in their journey, and how can we engage with them? So just to kind of review this, if you're not already familiar with it, the first stage in the buyer journey is awareness, right? So a prospect, someone is experiencing and seeing symptoms of a problem that they have. They may not fully be able to articulate that. They may not recognize that, but they're really looking to better understand, put some framework around it, find a name for their problem, right? And this is, and there are many parallels to this in healthcare, right? You're looking at symptoms of an illness or symptoms of a disease or symptoms of some sort of injury state. How do you determine what's truly going on? What's my problem that I have? Because until I define the problem, I can't fix it, right? After they've discovered what their problem is and are able to articulate it, now they're looking at researching and understanding how to solve that problem, right? So this is where they're considering all their different options. They're looking for solutions. We also call this solution seeking. And this is where people are really trying to actively research and understand what their problem is and how they can solve it. Finally, if they've selected a solution at this point, they're now really deciding who is going to provide that to me. Who are the vendors? What are the products that I can buy? How can I, where do I actually go do this? And in each stage of this journey, there are certain signals that the consumer or the prospect is giving off. In awareness stages, they're looking for solutions. They're searching for those solutions. Or if you're in a social setting, you can talk about solutions. Have you experienced this? It may mean this, right? You can help guide them. So they may not even recognize that they have a problem, but you can articulate that to them. My favorite example of this is the restless leg syndrome, RLS, right? There were commercials on this 10 or 12 years ago because someone came out with a drug that treated restless leg syndrome. I had no idea that there was a thing called, the restless leg syndrome. My grandmother couldn't stop moving, when she'd be watching TV. Who knew that was RLS, right? That was just her moving her legs, but now they've taken them from that awareness stage to the consideration stage to identify that problem and help talk about solutions for it. So it's each stage of this buyer journey. As a brand, as a marketing professional, you're looking to help buyers on that journey and guide them towards the appropriate solution and the right provider for that. And ideally, if you're not the right fit for them, if you're not the right solution for them, you also want to guide them away from you and point them in the direction of other solutions so that you're not wasting your time focusing on people that you can't help. So let's shift gears a little bit. This is an environment where we're looking to help buyers and connect with prospects. And part of that journey is about how we internally organize ourselves as marketing and sales professionals to meet those needs of the buyers along the way. And there's a lot of challenges that are happening right now for businesses, and you may see some of these reflected in your own organizations. You may hopefully not have many of these to worry about, in which case, like, we're excited that's happening for you. But as it turns out, a lot of companies are struggling right now with how do we cope with this changing environment? How do we better meet the needs of those buyers? So one of the things that I've experienced, and I hope you haven't had to be subjected to this too much, but it's overcoming the blame game between marketing and sales, right? That relationship can be either one of the most collaborative, productive, and exciting, partnerships within an organization, or it can be highly contentious and competitive, right? So this is coming from the HubSpot State of Inbound survey that happened in 2017, and they asked sales and marketing professionals, how would you characterize your company's sales and marketing relationship? And it ranges from very tightly aligned, where there's an existing service level agreement and what measures and expectations that are mutually agreed to and accepted, all the way down to, we're just not aligned at all. Like our marketing and sales objectives are at odds with one another. And, alarmingly, 10% of the respondents said, I don't know. I couldn't tell you, right? So the good news is generally these organizations are aligned. What I thought was interesting as I reviewed the data and I wanted to share here with you is that changes quite a bit based on the level. And I think anybody who's been in a large corporation can understand at a glance what this means, or the implications of this. The people who feel that the organizations are very tightly aligned tend to be at the higher levels. The VP directors, the C levels think, wow, we've really got these organizations tightly aligned and they're working well together. But as you go down into the people who actually have to do the work and they have to work together to deliver the results, that feeling of alignment really diminishes, right? And so what would be ideal in this case is that across the board, from top to bottom in your organization, everyone is saying, yeah, we get it. We know how we're working together. We know what is expected of us. We know what to expect of our partners and our corresponding organization, but that hasn't happened yet, right? So if you're seeing some of these same issues and challenges, I have a few ideas for how you can help address that and how you can make that alignment happen better. And the payoff for this, like when you do have those aligned, can be huge, right? So if you look at the organizations that say that they are really tightly aligned, that they have the SLA in place between marketing and sales, that they're generally aligned, the perceived effectiveness of their marketing strategy is much higher. Now, of course, this is really a correlation exercise. You can't say that one causes the other, but my sense would be that the organizations that have invested the time and effort into really tightly aligning their sales and marketing organizations are also the types of organizations that are very effective with their marketing strategy, that put the same corresponding level of time, energy, and effort into ensuring that their marketing strategy is going to be the most relevant and effective for their business and for their prospects. So I think there's a bit of a correlation happening here. And so if you're seeing that there are opportunities to improve that working relationship between sales and marketing, you can also invest the time and effort into your marketing strategy and making sure that fits well with your sales needs as well. So here's some ideas, some things that we see in 2018, for the upcoming year about how to really increase that collaborative relationship. the key actions that we see are conduct joint business planning, right? So plan your business together. Don't do that in isolation. We see it's better to start with the top level business goals, look at business growth, and identify who can be, who's accountable for each part of that growth effort. And then put some KPIs against that. Identify what are the key performance indicators so that you can track how well this is working, and identify which KPIs are marketing-led KPIs, like leads generated, impressions, new subscribers, visits to your website, social media engagement. Those things are typically led by marketing, versus sales-led KPIs, which can be more about engagement, response rates, how people are coming back and connecting with the sales team and sales activity. And then your shared KPIs, which are really about cost of acquisition and growth and average deal size and things that are shared really between marketing and sales that each of you have a role in delivering. The marketing and sales SLA, right? So the service level agreement is something that anybody in IT will recognize very well. It guarantees a certain level of service, right? AT&T has a service level agreement with you that says for businesses, that says we will provide this level of service to you. And marketing and sales SLA gives you that same idea. It's almost like a contract between marketing and sales to say, marketing is going to deliver these things. Sales will deliver these things. Marketing will expect this level of engagement and activity on leads that we generate. Sales expects a certain level of lead quality as they come in. So, you're looking at really setting expectations in a way that's very measurable and tracked so that you can see how well you're meeting your commitments to your sister organization. And then lastly, once you've got all these things in place, you actually have to review that. You have to stay on track with it. You have to make sure that it's continuing to go forward. So we suggest at least quarterly conducting regular business reviews between marketing and sales to talk about business growth performance. How well are you doing at your overall goal of growing the business? Looking at your joint KPIs, how are we delivering on those? What do those look like? How are we measuring them? And then looking at how well are we complying and conforming to our SLA? Are we delivering what we say we're going to? Do we have any areas where there are opportunities to improve? And this is a great place where having a dashboard, simple red, yellow, green tracking system can work really well to help shape and structure that conversation. Okay. So let's talk a little bit. Now we have our internal, kind of alignment issues covered. Let's talk about what's happening with the modern buyer. What's happening with buyers now in 2018? Where are they going? What are they doing? What's disrupting our marketplace? What are they thinking about differently? So let's talk about where they're getting their information, right? So when we look at, that awareness and consideration, how are they finding the information, right? How are they getting it? And this is something that comes from the KPMG Global Online Consumer Report. So it covers both B2B and B2C buyers. But what I really liked about this was they broke it down by generation. So they're looking at, baby boomers versus Generation X versus millennials. So kind of the three major groups of consumers right now. As the trend of reviews and recommendations is still highly sought after in this space. People are also consulting company websites, especially when they get to that consideration and decision phase. And one of the things I thought was interesting about this was the counterintuitive notion of visiting physical stores to see, try, or fit the product, right? And also the high rate at which millennials are speaking with their friends or family about any purchases that they look to make. So, as we look at the behaviors that we've seen and the way that people are engaging, what we're finding is that these offline channels are really becoming blended and merged with online activity. So while someone may want to shop online, right, especially for tangible objects or tangible goods, there's nothing that replaces that ability to go see it and look at it and stretch it out and look at it from different angles and put your hands on it, right? But then what tends to happen is that people go back online and they either want to buy it from the channel that they prefer, right, because of the convenience level or the experience of doing that, or they're shopping for the best price, right? So they use the offline channel in the stores to help inform an online purchase. Okay. So this is something that is continuing to change. We're keeping an eye on it to see how people are using these online and offline channels. But the takeaway for us as marketers is that, you know, one, you need to really be maintaining your reviews and recommendations. So actively managing those if you're not already. Ensuring that your company website has the latest and greatest information about your products and really provides the information that buyers are looking for, not just product features and benefits and packaging and things like that, but, you know, do you have a frequently asked questions section? Do you have ratings and reviews? Do you have a place where they can get support for a product? Do you have something that tells them a little bit more about you as a company and why they would want to engage with you as a brand, right? So then let's talk about how people like to communicate. And this is a business purposes. And so we're going to shift gears away a little bit from the B2B space or B2C space and talk a little bit about business to business. And this is something that we also thought was an interesting view based on seniority level. Looking at different communication channels, right? Because one of our jobs as marketers is to figure out how do we invest in communicating with our prospects? Where do we place our priorities? How do we emphasize, you know, our communications in order to meet the buyers where they are? And, you know, these are each in descending level of priority, but as you can see, there's a lot of similarities in here, but there's a really interesting trend happening around messenger apps. So as many of you may know, you know, there's been a big trend towards messenger apps. Facebook has their messenger app. They purchased WhatsApp. Google has been investing in a multitude of different chat apps to be able to get people to connect together more. And what's fascinating about this is that people may have started this from a consumer, you know, person-to-person connection, being able to connect with your friends and family and people that you know, but there's this huge upsurge in business communications that are happening over Messenger. You know, every month, over 1 billion messages are sent to businesses over Facebook Messenger. And that's something that didn't exist a few years ago. That's something that's brand new. So if your customers, your prospects, your potential buyers are looking for you on Messenger and they reach out to you and you don't respond to them, right? That's a missed opportunity to help them in their buyer's journey. And as you can see, and this is something that harkens back to that original myth that we busted around purchase lists, emails are still most dominant. And I don't have the numbers here, but there's some really interesting insights into how people are using email and why they're finding it so valuable. And one of the top reasons people say that they're still using email and the things that have improved for them in the email space over the last year or so is really around the better use of anti-spam filters. So the fact that Gmail, Outlook, other providers are getting smarter about understanding which emails are most relevant to you or more valuable. People are continuing to use email because it's getting more and more useful to them because they're not deluged with all this random spam and messages. So it further increases the emphasis on ensuring that when you're using email, it needs to be fully opted in, that people are asking for that communication with you and that your emails to them are relevant, they're personalized, they're valuable to that individual so that they continue to use it. And not just for that individual, but also so that the email platform that you're using recognizes that the emails coming from you are valuable and should bypass the anti-spam filters. So let's talk a little bit more about, looking to the future and what's coming. We've talked a lot about emails. We've talked about things that you may be familiar with, the buyer's journey along the way. Here are a couple areas that we think are really emerging now that are going to continue to get stronger and become more prevalent over the next year and in the future years after 2018. So let's talk about artificial intelligence. So many of you are consumers and users of artificial intelligence today without even really realizing it, right? So you're getting more personalization without increased effort, right? So for example, in HubSpot, there's the ability to create personalized emails and make them more relevant to individuals and do more segmentation based on machine learning techniques, right? So the software is telling us these are the types of messages that you want to receive. These are the things that you're most receptive to. They're learning those things and then surfacing that to us as marketers so we can take advantage of that. There's also performance optimization. So looking at, for example, in emails, like let's send the email not just at a set time of 7 o'clock in the morning, but let's send the email when that individual is most likely to open that email, right? So that helps you improve the performance of your email send and ensures that, they're more relevant and timely for the person who's receiving it. And then lastly, and I think this is kind of a sleeper hit for artificial intelligence, many of you are familiar with Google Translate and with other translation services that have been out there, but there's been this quiet revolution in translation and localization using artificial intelligence. I think it was late in 2016 that Google announced that their algorithm for translation between languages had actually introduced a middle language. So it was a language that they translated everything into and then translated it from that middle language into the destination. So they had created this kind of like meta language that could be used to signal intent and meaning of words that everything was translated into, and then translated from that into the destination language, really increased the accuracy of the translation, not just in terms of the word for word translation, but the intent and meaning was there, and that was preserved across the translation. So that's something that is here now and really has gotten good. So if you haven't played around with Google Translate for a while, give it a shot, especially if you know other languages, or you can test the accuracy and the veracity of the language. Give that a try. It's surprisingly better than it was even 4 or 5 years ago. Looking ahead, we talked about the rise of messaging and the way that people are looking to interact with brands and engage with them faster. We have chatbots today. There's some really interesting bots out there that act almost like as autoresponders for messaging. So you can type a message to them, it has a general sense of what you're looking for and can respond back with a few canned responses to that. That's something that's here today. And we've been playing with a chatbot platform called ChatFuel that does this well. But they're still kind of dumb. It's very, recipe driven, right? If someone says this sort of thing, then respond with this answer or this set of answers. And where the AI has come in is really around kind of understanding, if I say, what's the cost of your service, that means the same thing as what's your price, right? So it's basically just making sure that it's trying to understand the intent. But in the future, we're going to see this continue to evolve, and these chatbots are going to be more, they're going to be more machine learning incorporated in them, so they can be more conversational and more natural language rather than kind of that message response model. We're going to see improved advertising and targeting optimization. You're seeing more and more of this with Facebook, but really as you're looking at your media spends and where you advertise, artificial intelligence is continuing to grow and play a role here. We're going to see that trend continue, and I expect to see that our advertising and marketing spends could become more efficient if you're working with the right partners and platforms. So if you're not seeing that trend in your media spends today, it might be a good opportunity to look at it and say, are we taking advantage of the platforms that are the most accurate, the most cutting edge in terms of the relevancy of our content to our audience? We're going to see more virtual sales agents and order management. One of the trends that's happening, I think everyone's seen, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, is that people don't really want to talk to a salesperson. They don't really want to get on the phone. If I'm ordering something or buying something, I really just want to do it myself. I want to, pick what I need, build my order and submit it. And if I can do that in a way that I feel confident that I'm getting the right thing, then I'll be good. I don't need to speak with anyone. So these AI tools will help make that process smoother, faster, and more on demand. And then the last area, and I think this is probably the biggest question mark, there's been a lot of effort invested into artificially generated content by AI. So using an AI to write blog posts and social media content and create advertisements. And this is still probably the most far out there. I think there's been a lot of backlash to this. A lot of people saying, but an AI can't do the same things that a person can do, and we can't replace copywriters. And that's absolutely true. There's a reason why we have copywriters. There's a reason why we have humans in the mix of this. But I would keep an eye on this, because even if you write great content and you use copywriters and you're really in tune with your prospects and what they need as a brand, one of the things that they may be struggling is this deluge of crappy content that's generated by AI or that's not relevant to them, that they're going to be trying to find your message from. So keep an eye on this as, in terms of something that could be happening over the next couple of years. So let's talk about social content. This is where this is where that battle's really playing out. Facebook has won the social marketplace, right? Between Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp, they really own social. They're the platform for everything. And although there are other smaller players and other platforms that are out there, most people are on Facebook properties the majority of the time that they're working. And as you look at where marketers are going, they're looking at Facebook and YouTube. The video content on these social networks is now really expected across all sources. Like, it's really the place where people are investing more of their time and effort. Instagram is a strong player. People are continuing to invest more. People are looking to invest more in messaging apps. So this trend of more visual content, more interactive content is continuing to increase, right? And the recommendation here is leverage chatbots for scale. So that responsiveness, if you can set up something like Chat Fuel yourself, that's a great way to it's a really great way to get your toes in the water there and at least get started with chat. And the other area around video, and this is something that that from my background, I always thought the more you spent on video, the more that you invested, the more you planned it out, the more you thought about it, the better it was going to perform, right? So that would mean, like, if we're going to do a video shoot, we'll script it out, we'll partner with a production company, we'll create, we'll shoot the video over a couple of days, we'll spend 75 grand on it and go, right? And what we're finding in today's marketplace is that, for a variety of reasons, but especially because of the perceived authenticity, the lower the production value on the video, oftentimes the more trusted and more effective it can be. So if you're waiting to get started on video because you're thinking, I don't have a video budget, or I don't have, the time and effort to be able to invest in this big video shoot, right? Reset your expectations, relook at this and say, what do I really need? What am I trying to say? What's my content that I want to communicate with my consumers about? How do I want to connect with them? And just get that out there. You can shoot video using an iPhone that still works very well. In fact, we're going to take this webinar presentation, this video afterwards, and we're going to leverage that for additional marketing purposes. We'll be publishing that. We'll have have this landing pages set up to watch the video. And this is something that doesn't cost us a huge amount of money in terms of production value. It's more our time and effort in creating the content. So, and this is a last minute addition to our deck after some announcements that were made last week by Mark Zuckerberg. He's making a big change, or Facebook more accurately, is making a big change to what they're optimizing the platform towards. In the past, Facebook's strategy was to optimize what you see and what you experience towards providing you with relevant content, right? So everything you saw was about, was measured against how relevant do you find this content? What are you engaging with? What are you spending time on? What are you clicking on? How are you reading it, right? Which is a very passive, still very passive way to consume content. We were talking about this. He's now shifting this towards, optimizing conversations, encouraging more meaningful conversations, which means that instead of pushing content that people passively consume, it's going to be emphasizing content that sparks conversations between people, right? And especially people within your network. And he extended this to marketers and to brands and said, this is going to happen for marketers and brands as well. So if your page is producing content that gets people to read it or watch the video, but then don't do anything else with it, you're not going to get visibility. What you will get visibility for is for content that evokes conversations, that gets people to have meaningful conversations. And what they're going to be doing is measuring the quality of that conversation. So if it devolves into a very passionate but empty and meaningless conversation, it's not going to get the same sort of traction as something that really provokes thought or evokes thought and quality conversations. So as marketers and as brands, we're going to be looking for what's the content that really helps drive discussion and positive discussion, things that are thought-provoking and interesting to our audiences, and gets them to speak with one another, right? And I think the big takeaway for me is that this is in response to the fact that there are plenty of other places to go get good content online, whether that's Reddit and social bookmarking sites, places where there's other conversations happening between strangers on the internet. Facebook isn't competing with those sites any longer. They're really going back to their core of how do we connect people together? How do we make that engagement happen between people? Because when that happens, then they're going to spend more time on Facebook. They're going to engage more, and then Facebook will then monetize that again. So I think they're trying to plan ahead for the future a little bit. They're going to take a short-term hit in terms of their level of engagement, advertising revenue, and spending, and things like that. But in the long run, I think they have to do this in order to preserve their audience. So sales disruptors, right? So, and this is, I think, the continuation of a longer-term trend. Buyers are looking for that same ease of purchase and no-nonsense approach in B2C and B2B channels. There's really not a big difference now in the expectations for the buying process in a business setting versus a personal setting. These preferences are even stronger as company seniority increases. So there's less time available for me to deal with a cumbersome sales process or something that requires a lot of time and energy to be invested in just making a purchase, right? And people look to shop at store. They want to see what's happening. When you're talking with B2C consumers, people who are looking to shop in store, oftentimes, as we talked about with that millennial, they're looking to go see the product. They're looking for that physical experience and interaction with it so they can get their hands on it. But the actual purchase can happen in other channels, especially online. And typically, the top two reasons why people go to online after seeing it, making an offline test, is because they want to go to the website that they prefer, like that they have a great experience with, or they're shopping around for the lowest price, right? So it's a very different retail experience now than it has been in the past. And there's certainly more of a changing expectation for retailers in terms of what experience they provide in their brick and mortar stores. There's some quotes here from that survey of inbound marketers from last year. I think this is going to continue, but it's really, the buyer behavior, the power of the buying process has shifted to the buyer. They have more choices than ever before. They have higher expectations in terms of the ease of purchase and the rapid response, the instant gratification, right? And most individuals at a variety of generational levels, especially if this is something that's a transaction or easy to purchase, they're going directly towards a technology driven sales process. So I can purchase it from my phone, I can purchase it online. One of the fastest growing businesses that I heard about in 2017 only accepted purchases via text message. So you could text to buy the product. And when we tested it out, it was probably one of the most streamlined and interesting experiences that we've ever seen. Very frictionless. It was, fast response. It was very low touch in terms of the number of questions that you needed, and everything just hit, your order was placed and fulfilled almost immediately. So these sorts of disruptive sales processes are going to continue to happen in 2018, and they're going to build upon a lot of those other changing buyer behaviors that we talked about in the previous slides. So the last part of our presentation here is around goal setting, right? And this is something that, I've seen a whole range of experience in goal setting. Some people that don't set goals at all or set very vague goals, all the way up to very structured, specific goals. So we're going to talk about one of my favorite frameworks for goal setting. It's very simple to understand, takes a little bit of practice to be able to get it right. But it found it to be very effective in setting goals that you can actually reach and that are meaningful. So this is called the SMART framework. It starts with, is my goal specific? Do I know exactly what I want, and can I describe it to others succinctly, right? Is it measurable? How am I going to track this? How am I going to know that I'm successful in meeting that goal, right? Is it achievable? Is it something that I can actually do or affect? Is it relevant? Does it actually matter to my business? Is it something that you know is something that we all want and we've agreed that we want? And then lastly, is it timed? When does it happen, right? So it's not just an open-ended anytime goal. So my question is which goal would you sign up to deliver as a marketer? The one on the left says we need to generate more leads as soon as possible. The one on the right says we need to generate 30% more MQLs at the same CPL over the next 90 days to fill our sales team pipeline and grow our top line revenue next quarter. So for me, I would definitely prefer to take the goal on the right. I know exactly what I'm getting, something that I know I can achieve, right? I know what it will take to get there, and it's time bound. Well, it's very clear whether we make that goal or not, and we can track every step along the way, right? So let's talk about how this goal embodies those SMART features. So it's specific, 30% more MQLs, right? So not just leads, but marketing qualified leads. I know exactly what type of lead I need to generate, and 30% more compared to the previous period. I'm trying not to like get too prescriptive with this, but 30% more over what we've been doing. Is it measurable? Okay, yeah, 30% more at the same CPL. So I've got a little bit of a restriction in terms of the cost per lead. Is it relevant, right? Why does this matter? We want to grow our top line revenue next quarter. So that's something that matters to the business, or we're going to assume that that matters to the business. And is it timed? Yeah, next quarter, right? And we're going to generate them over the next 90 days. Sorry, that was the time part of this. So the question, the part that we didn't talk about is this achievable, right? So, you know, this is something that's in here almost because of what's not said in this goal. So we didn't say we're going to grow our top line revenue next quarter. That's not our goal. That's a shared goal with sales, right? So our goal as marketers is to generate the 30% more MQLs, right? That's the goal that we're signing up to achieve. In order to achieve that bigger goal of growing top line revenue, that's where we need to partner with our sales organization in order to meet that goal. And that's something that we would have to achieve together, not just as our marketing organization. So we put together for each of you a marketing goals template. And if this is your first time going through this model, this can be really helpful for you to be able to make sure that you're thinking about this and you're asking yourself the right questions. So let me just walk you through real quick the different sections of this so you know how this works. And you'll get this template after the webinar. We'll email this out to you so you can download it and use it. You know, and if you need any help with setting these goals, we'd be happy to consult with you on that. So the first part here is really header information. It really helps you understand, you know, what this goal is set up for, right, and where you're finding it. This is something so you can easily sort it out from all the other goals that you may have for your organization. So this first part is about the specific and measurable part. So what's the overall marketing goal, right? What's the needs of my goal, and what's the number for that? How am I going to measure that, right? This third section here helps you break down that goal into smaller pieces, right? So it helps you, you can look at different goals that you may have, different outcomes, and ways to break that down and calculate how to get there, okay? And then the last part is really the achievable, relevant, and timed. And so this talks about, you know, when are you going to do it? How much time is it going to take? And what's the biggest challenge that's preventing you from reaching that goal? What do you have to overcome in order to get there, right? So as you go through this process, you may have to, you know, come back to different sections as you get through it, or as you answer other questions. But using this goals template can help you ensure that you're hitting all of those aspects of the framework. And then as a result of this, when you get finished with it, you'll have something that you can share both upwardly within your organization to say, here are the goals that we're signing up to do, and here's why we think we can do it. And you also can align everyone within your organization that you're going to deliver that. So it helps you work downward within the organization to ensure that everyone knows which piece of the goal that they own themselves or are accountable to deliver in order to meet that goal. So it helps, just get everyone literally on the same page of how you're going to meet your marketing goals. Okay. So at this point, I'm going to open it up for Q&A. I know we have about probably 7 or 8 minutes for questions and answers. So, please feel free to use the Q&A box here on the Zoom meeting. You can ask any questions. We'll go through and answer them. If you have a question you want to just let me know that it's coming, you can click the raise your hand button. That way we'll know that it's coming. But we've got a little bit of time here to be able to address any questions you may have about the presentation. Anything that you may have heard or have questions about in 2018, or things that you're looking for, our thoughts on as well.
Yes, and this is Christina. I'd like to also state that if you would like and you raise your hand, then you'll be able to have your mic unmuted and we can hear you as well. So if you'd like to do that as opposed to writing down the Q&A in the box, just raise your hand and we'll be able to get you involved in the conversation.
We may have to do that thing like, in junior high where nobody asks a question, the teacher calls on someone, says, "What's your question? What do you have?"
Oh gosh, well that's on you. You get to choose. Like
and this is the point where we watch everyone drop out of the webinar at the same time.
We have a hand raiser. Wonderful. Thank you, Katrina, for helping us out. So Katrina, are you there? Hi, Katrina.
She may be on mute here. I think we can unmute her real quick. Hi, Katrina, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know why my window went down.
No problem.
So my question is about the inbound marketing, but it's more so about the content of the website. Currently, my with the 11 clinics that I'm taking care of, we're actually doing blogging. We're using SEO with each blog, and we're just using professional content. And then I'm going in and implementing each part of the SEO. I'd like to learn how to maximize SEO, and that probably isn't necessarily relevant to inbound marketing, but we are seeing that the increase with the digital marketing. And so I'm glad that they're making that transition. But I would just like to be able to share with the doctors why this is important, and for them and for chiropractic, how they can still reach their buyer, even if they may not have the ability to do a digital purchase.
Sure, absolutely. And I think that's a really great question. And so a couple of thoughts that could help here. So I would start with just a brief background on where Google is with their search algorithm right now. They've shifted everything towards this idea of a topic cluster, right? So taking a group of blog posts and content on your site and clustering them around a topic. So they look at your content and say, okay, you're talking about
kind of alignment and, hopefully you can still hear me. They're talking really about how are people, you have content about, say, back pain, neck pain, you have, those sorts of blog posts. They're looking at that and grouping that around the topic of pain management or chiropractic pain management. So as people are searching for that topic, they hear it, they find your content. Right? So as a marketer, what you're doing is identifying what are those topics that we can be experts on, that we can speak to intelligently and provide high quality content for people around, right? And then you map those against the different parts of that buyer's journey. So are they in that awareness stage? If I've got back pain or neck pain, right? They may not know what's causing that or what the underlying diagnosis is, but they have the symptoms, right? So you're mapping that topic into the awareness set, and you're writing content for people that are searching for those topics and guiding them towards, here are some potential solutions or some potential diagnoses for you. And then because you're not diagnosing online, you're guiding them towards the chiropractor to say, for an expert diagnosis or opinion, please, book an appointment with us to meet with the chiropractor. So you're helping guide them in their buyer's journey towards understanding that solution, right? So the way that you measure that is how many people are taking that intended next step from being in the awareness phase to being in the consideration phase. Okay. So I have a question from Nicole. I'm going to answer this one live. She says, what are your thoughts on the new Facebook algorithm and the effects that it may have on small business marketing? So I think it's definitely going to have a large effect. We've been, for the last probably 4 or 5 years with Facebook advertising, we've really been focused on promoting content that drives an action, right? So I promote content for this, for example, here's an announcement about my webinar, and click here to sign up and join the webinar, right? That was effective, it worked well. We got several people to register. I spent some money on the advertising for it. Our brand pages had that information on it as well. But no one really engaged or had a conversation around our webinar. Nobody, wrote comments on it or said like, oh, wow, I'm excited about this. I want to share it with other people. And maybe just because we didn't have enough people seeing it to spark that. But they're going to be looking at relevancy not based on how many people click on the button to sign up or how many people spend time reading our webinar information on the site. They're going to be looking at that webinar and saying, how many conversations is this starting? Like, how many people are talking about this with their friends and family? How many meaningful conversations is this sparking? So that means for us as small business marketers, we're gonna have to refocus our efforts with our Facebook marketing to really drive those conversation outcomes, to get people to comment, share, discuss with other people, the back and forth conversations to happen. And that takes a different style of writing. It takes a different style of creative. It's going to take a little bit of time for everybody to figure out what that algorithm is and how to best optimize for it. But I definitely see where the effect is going to be more about how do we engage with people, how do we have conversations, how do we participate in that buyer's journey in an authentic and real, meaningful way, versus how many actions are we driving or how many passive activities are we doing, time spent consuming our content.
I'd like to interject for just a moment. I'd like to take this opportunity to share a poll, since we've got some great participation. What we're looking for is an idea of what you'd like to see in the next webinar. So bear with us. We are going to launch our poll. We're going to give it a few seconds, maybe a minute, for folks to respond. This is fun to watch the results come in as we're doing this. Okay, it looks like the first 5 inbound marketing tactics are going to win.
Oh, no, the deep dive into the buyer's journey is coming from behind to take the lead.
Well, super. Okay, well, we're going to give it maybe a couple seconds more. Okay. Well, it looks like we're about there. We've got 77, 80, 88% have voted.
All right, one more. All right, good.
Okay, we're up to a minute. Listen, everyone, thank you very much for your input. And I think we might actually, I don't know if we have, okay, we have a thank you. Thank you, super.
Well, we have 3 things to take away before we go. The last 3 things. So if you happen to take a great nap for the last 45 minutes, right, and this fell asleep to the dulcet tones of my voice, take these 3 things away. All right. Buyers are more empowered with more choices than ever before. Okay. When I would, even 10 years ago when I was working in toothpaste, right, there were only a few big brands, but there were a lot of choices within those brands. Today, there's even more choices available, and there's more brands because the shelf space for consumers has grown exponentially. You can buy just about anything, and the cost of someone to create a new product has dropped tremendously, right? So it's very easy for people to create new products, and people are creating all sorts of choices for your buyers, right? Takeaway number 2, alignment between sales and marketing is absolutely critical to participating in the buyer's journey. You have to be speaking with one voice and one brand experience from beginning to end. So make sure that you're aligned with your marketing and sales team so that you guys are focused on how are we going to really meet the needs of those buyers and succeed. Okay. And then finally, and this ties back to the changes that we're seeing with Facebook, is that businesses that connect and talk with their prospects, that encourage that two-way conversation, will be far more successful than those that just talk to them. The one-way conversation is pretty much over. So with that in mind, have a wonderful afternoon. Thank you very much for attending. I'm really glad that we had such a great, great level of participation in our first webinar series. We'll be sending out a poll afterwards, and Christina will give you a little bit more information about that. But any thoughts, any comments, any observations that you have would be, fantastically useful for us to be able to continue to improve this.
Absolutely. And very quickly, I would just want to add the smart worksheet we talked about. You will also receive that, a link to download that. So if you have any questions or are wondering where that's coming from and you didn't quite see it right away, please feel free to go ahead and email me. I think you all have received a confirmation from my email address. So have a wonderful week, and thanks again for coming.